All right, so are you ready to dive in? Today we're tackling a question that's been around forever. Was there really a great flood?
A great flood, huh?
Yeah, and we've got some seriously interesting source material that's really shaking things up.
Oh,
Questioning timelines, throwing out some wild theories about Earth's history.
this is like fun.
It really does.
Yeah.
Like, what if those ancient stories about a world-altering flood are more than just stories, you know?
I see.
But before we go too crazy, let's start with the basics. Pretty much every culture seems to have a flood myth.
Yeah, it is fascinating how widespread that is.
Right. What's the deal with that?
Well, and the similarities across cultures are really striking. You always see a global flood, some kind of divine intervention, and humanity barely surviving.
Yeah, so is it just a coincidence? Or was there some real event that happened?
That's where our source material gets interesting. It challenges us to think outside of what we see today.
Like, we only know what we can see now.
Kinda. They bring up this guy, James Hutton, from way back in the 18th century, who basically dismissed the flood idea because we don't see global floods happening today.
But that's like saying, I've never seen a shooting star, so they can't exist.
Exactly. And it makes you think, can we really understand the past just by looking at what's happening now? I mean, the Earth has been around for a long, long time. Who knows what could have happened?
Yeah, really puts things to perspective. Okay, so let's move on to something a little more concrete. Fossils.
Yeah.
We all know how they form, right? Something dies, gets buried in sediment, millions of years go by, and bam, you got a fossil.
That's the usual story. Yeah.
But our source material throws a curveball. They say rapid burial, especially for big animals and things like jellyfish, is more likely.
Mhm.
Wait, jellyfish fossils, those things are like all water.
Right. That's why the source emphasizes rapid burial. It keeps things from, decomposing.
So like a sudden catastrophic event, something like a massive flood.
It's definitely a possibility. And they also talk about the death pose found in a lot of dinosaur fossils with their heads and tails arched back.
Like they were doing yoga or something.
Haha, not quite. It's actually a posture often seen with drowning. So the source suggests it could point to a massive, widespread flood.
So picture this.
Yeah.
A giant wave wiping out all the dinosaurs. But wait, some dinosaurs were huge. And what about the ones that could fly?
Well, keep in mind, we are diving into some pretty speculative stuff here. There could be other explanations for the death pose.
Okay, fair enough. But still, a dinosaur drowning. That's a wild image. All right, let's move on to another piece of the puzzle. Rock layers. Each layer is like a page in Earth's history, right? Millions of years of slow, gradual buildup.
That's how it's usually understood.
But get this, our source brings up footprints found within these layers.
Footprints.
Yeah, they say it means the sediment wasn't laid down slowly but all at once, really fast.
Interesting. How fast are we talking?
Well, they don't give an exact time, but they compare it to volcanic eruptions.
Oh, right. We've seen how eruptions can quickly create thick layers of rock.
Exactly. So maybe, just maybe, we've been looking at the geologic timescale all wrong. Like we've been reading it too slowly or something.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? It's like we need to speed up the film, right?
Yeah, fast forward a bit. And this is where it gets really wild. We're talking about questioning some pretty basic stuff, like radiometric dating. You know, how we figure out how old rocks and fossils are.
Yeah, radiometric dating.
Well, our source isn't afraid to stir the pot. They're like, what if there are problems with radiometric dating? What if it's giving us ages that are way too old?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So are we saying dinosaurs might be younger than we think? Or get this, what if they were around at the same time as early humans? Like, did someone lose their pet Stegosaurus back in the Stone Age?
Yeah. Well, they don't exactly say humans and dinosaurs were hanging out together.
Right, right.
But they do throw it out there as a possibility.
Which is pretty mind-blowing. And it kind of connects back to that whole lizard people thing we talked about before, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you mean.
Okay, hold on. Are we going down some conspiracy theory rabbit hole here?
Hey, remember, we're just exploring the ideas from the source material, even if they sound a little crazy.
True, true. But let's bring it back down to Earth for a sec. Even if we just imagine for a minute that the timeline is off, what does that mean for how we understand history?
It opens up a whole new world of possibilities. What if Earth has kind of like reset itself multiple times? Like massive extinction events that wipe everything out and then bam, new life starts up.
Whoa, like a cosmic do-over. So are we talking about a bunch of crazy events? Or are we back to the Great Flood idea?
Well, the source suggests the Great Flood could have been one of those resets, almost like formatting a hard drive. erasing everything and starting fresh.
A whole planet getting a hard drive wipe. That's intense.
Hmm.
So are we saying human civilization might not be the first one? That there were others before us, buried under layers of rock and stuff?
It's definitely a trippy thought. This idea of history repeating itself, civilizations rising and falling, and we only find little bits and pieces of what was there before.
Wow, that's kind of humbling. Imagine all the stories and knowledge that could be lost. Like a giant puzzle with most of the pieces missing.
Yeah, and who knows what those missing pieces could tell us? It's a mystery just waiting to be solved.
Okay, I'm definitely hooked.
Yeah.
But before we get too lost in all the what-ifs and lost civilizations, what's some of the best evidence for this great flood idea? What really stood out to you from the source material?
Hmm. For me, it's the sheer scale of it all. If we even consider the possibility of a global flood that totally changed Earth, it raises a ton of new questions. What happened to the civilizations that might have been here before? What secrets are hidden underground? It's a giant mystery just begging to be explored.
Like the ultimate treasure hunt. But wouldn't a flood that big leave some pretty obvious clues? Shouldn't we have found something by now?
Not necessarily. You got to think about erosion, the way the Earth's plates move, and just time passing. All that stuff can hide even the biggest events. Plus, our understanding of Earth's history is always changing. What we think is undeniable evidence today might look totally different in the future.
So there could be a whole lost world out there just waiting to be discovered.
Yeah.
Atlantis, here we come.
Maybe not Atlantis, haha. But the source does mention some cultures believe their ancestors survived the flood by going underground or up to high mountains.
Okay, now my imagination is really going wild. Ancient survivors, hidden cities, lost technology. Like something out of an Indiana Jones movie.
It does have that adventurous feel to it. But beyond the adventure, there's a deeper side to think about. This idea that history repeats itself with civilizations rising and falling makes you wonder about what we can learn from the past.
It's like that saying, those who can't remember the past are doomed to repeat it. But what if the past is literally buried beneath us? How can we learn from it if we can't even find it?
That's the challenge, right? We have to be like archaeologists, piecing together clues, trying to understand ancient writings, using everything we have to figure out the past. And even then, we might never know the whole story.
So where does that leave us? Are we supposed to believe a great flood actually happened, or is it all just a myth? What should our listeners take away from all this?
I think the biggest takeaway is to be curious and open-minded. Our source today really pushes us to question what we think we know, to look at things from different angles, and to remember that our understanding of the past isn't set in stone.
So don't be afraid to explore the unknown, even if it's a bit confusing.
Exactly. Learning is a lifelong journey, and sometimes you find the most amazing things in the most unexpected places.
Well said. Okay, so we've talked about the myths, looked at the evidence, and thought about all the possibilities. But before we wrap up this epic deep dive, I have one more question that's been bugging me. If this great flood was so huge, wiping out civilizations and changing the whole planet, wouldn't there be some kind of memory of it? Like something bigger than just some myths and legends?
It's really interesting how knowledge can get lost over time. Even now, with all our technology and stuff, we lose so much history. It gets distorted or just plain forgotten.
Yeah, that's true. We depend on what's written down, what archaeologists find, and stories passed down through generations, and all of that can be incomplete or biased. So are you saying the memory of a great flood could have been, like, hidden on purpose, or maybe changed into something less extreme?
It's definitely possible. Our source even mentions some scholars think those flood myths we see everywhere could be based on smaller, local floods that got exaggerated as time went on.
So like a game of telephone, where the story changes a little bit each time it's told.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe there's a tiny bit of truth that's been covered up by all these myths and metaphors. Kind of like those old cities they find buried under modern ones,
Huh.
Remnants of the past hiding in plain sight.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And who knows what else could be out there, waiting to be discovered. Maybe one day we'll find something that proves the flood happened, like a lost city or some ancient writing, or even Noah's Ark, perfectly preserved.
Or maybe we'll find something even crazier than we could ever imagine, right?
Right. Okay, so we've gone over the myths, we've looked at the evidence, and we've thought about what it all could mean. What should our listeners take away from all of this?
I think the biggest takeaway is to stay curious and be open to new ideas. This source we've been looking at really makes us question what we think we know, look at things from different angles, and realize that what we understand about the past can change.
So it's like, don't be afraid to explore and ask questions, even if things aren't totally clear.
Exactly. Learning never ends, and sometimes the best discoveries happen when you least expect them.
I like that. So, to everyone listening, what do you think? Was there really a great flood? And what other secrets might be hidden away, just waiting for us to find them? We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep. We'll see you next time.